Hey guys, and welcome to a deck tech on one of the cheapest and most effective decks you can use as a free-to-play player to grind the ladder now that Ravnica Allegiance is out. So, I'm sure a lot of you have noticed the red deck that has been sweeping through the ladder. That is a modified version of last season's red deck wins. However, the deck has received two big upgrades as well as a few smaller upgrades that really allow it to compete and just mow through players in about 3 to 4 turns. This deck is super cheap to make. The only rares in the entire deck are the risk factors right here, you can see, and nothing else really costs anything. There's a few uncommons and a lot of commons. So very cheap deck to make, a lot of very good cards in here, and while you might get a bit of hate for playing it, it is a very effective deck. The games take like 3 to 4 minutes usually, and it's a lot of fun to play too. So, the cards that you want are G2 Lava Runner, Shock, Spear Spewer, Electrostatic Field, Lightning Strike, via Shino Pyromancer, Light Up the Stage, Risk Factor, Skewer the Critics, and Wizard's Lightning. The Fanatical Firebrand is a flex spot. There's quite a lot of different cards that can go through here. Firebrand is one of the ones that I use, but another one I actually like quite a bit is, just a second, go to 1-drops. This one, the brand new Footlight Fiend. So Footlight Fiend does not have haste, which means it won't get in for 1 right off the bat if you're on the play. However, it can trade up for anything with 2 toughness, unlike Fanatical Firebrand, and it's pretty good just overall. However, Fanatical Firebrand is my version for mono red. G2 Lava Runner is just a very solid red aggro card. It's a 1/2 that can be played on turn 1, and it's not dead in your hand later in the game, because if you have 2 instants and sorceries in the graveyard, such as Shock and Lightning Strike, then it gets +1/+0 and gains haste. It's also a wizard, which allows it to turn on Wizard's Lightning and make it cost only a single red mana instead of 3. So G2 Lava Runner, definitely one of the ones you never want to cut. Shock is just a good card overall. It lets you get early blockers out of the way or just ping in for damage, especially with Electrostatic Field on the board. It's a fairly good spell, but it's actually probably one of the first of the instants and sorceries that I would cut. Spear Spewer is a brand new Ravnica Allegiance card, and basically this card reads, every turn deal 1 damage to the opponent and 1 damage to yourself. Now, against normal decks, or playing as a normal deck, this would not be a very good card for most decks just because you don't really want to be killing yourself at the same speed as your opponent. However, for burn, which is trying to kill the opponent in quite literally the fastest possible time, Spear Spewer is great because as long as you have 1 health and they have 0, you win. Electrostatic Field is another defender, so instead of a 0/2 like Spear Spewer, it's a 0/4, and whenever you cast any instant or sorceries, it will deal 1 damage to your opponent. So that might not seem great, but if you play Electrostatic Field turn 2, and then play Shock, Wizard's Lightning, and any other 1-mana spell turn 3, then that's 3 damage off Electrostatic Field right there. You still have a 0/4 blocking your opponent's creatures from attacking, and you can do it again next turn. So pretty good card. Lightning Strike, just a very basic 3 damage for 2 mana at instant speed, any target. Very good spell. There are better spells, but this is a classic and pretty strong. Via Shino Pyromancer is basically just another creature that it's got a sort of pseudo haste. It comes down and deals 2 damage to target player or planeswalker, and it doesn't need to swing, which is a big advantage because that means that if they have a board and you play via Shino Pyromancer, you still get that 2 damage in without having to try to swing through the board. Now, up next is probably the best new spell that Red has gotten this expansion. Light Up the Stage is a 3-mana, exile the top 2 cards of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play those cards at sorcery speed. Now, that on its own is pretty bad. That's basically 3 mana, draw 2, and if you don't use those 2, you lose them. However, it has a spectacle cost. If you have dealt damage to your opponent this turn, you can play this for just 1 red mana, which makes it 1 red mana to draw 2 cards, and because your entire deck is super low on the curve, those 2 cards are probably going to be able to playable either this turn or the turn after. It's an amazing card. It refuels your hand if you get low. It lets you do a lot of busted stuff, and it is probably my favorite new card of the entire set. Risk Factor is sort of like a more expensive light up the stage that doesn't always work, but gets in for a lot of damage. Risk Factor is 3 damage to deal 4 to your opponent, or draw 3 cards, but your opponent is the one that chooses. It also has Jumpstart, which means that you can cast it again once you've cast it the first time, if you discard a card from your hand. So if you have a bunch of extra mountains sitting around in your hand because you got unlucky with your Risk Factor that let you drew 3 mountains, you can cast it again, discard a mountain, and have them either take 4 again or draw another 3. Good card, but you don't really want all 4 of them. 2 to 3 is usually the sweet spot, as Light Up the Stage just does everything Risk Factor does, but a little better, except for damage. The other big spell that Red got this expansion was Skewer the Critics. Skewer the Critics is basically like Lightning Strike, except it's 1 more mana and it's sorcery speed. However, just like Light Up the Stage, it has a spectacle cost, which means you can cast this for 1 mana if you manage to get in for damage this turn, and deal another 3 to the face for only 1 mana. Really powerful, really strong, and big part of the reason that Red is so good right now. Now, the final spell is Wizard's Lightning. This is basically Lightning Bolt, which is the better version of Lightning Strike. It's if Lightning Strike and Scare the Critics were kind of mashed together and really good. Wizard's Lightning does that as long as you have a wizard on the field. Otherwise, it's 3 mana for 3 damage, which is not that good. Wizard's Lightning, as long as you're running G2 Lava Runner and via Shino Pyromancer, both are wizards, they both turn it on, it is a very good spell, and you will often be casting it for 1 mana. And yeah, the entire point of this deck is literally just 7 times 3 equals 21. You want to hit them in the face as much as possible, and do 20 damage as fast as you can before they can react or start gaining life. The deck has a decent amount of reach thanks to Risk Factor and Light Up the Stage. You can draw some after you've already sort of vomited your hand onto the battlefield. However, you will find that if by turn 3 you have nothing on the field and like 2 cards in hand, you're probably going to lose if they're not below 10 health already. However, the deck has some very explosive starts, so let's just jump right into game and test it out. So this is a great starting hand to keep. As you can see, we've got 2 lands, which is pretty much all you need for the deck. You only need 3 to cast any spell in the deck. There's no 4 spell or higher cards. And we've got 3 G2 Lava Runners, which is the best 1-drop in the deck. We'll drop 1 turn 1. We can drop either 2 on turn 2, or we can use the spells. And on turn 3, by turn 3, we will have enabled all 3 of them to have the +1/+0 and haste. So it is just a great keep to have. Pretty much nothing really better that we could have in this keep. So we will start off by playing the G2. It's pretty much a no-brainer to start with. If we were playing a control deck, we might play if we were playing as a control deck, we could play the Shock. So Mountain and Shock, and then Shock the Gutterbones. But we're aggro, we want as many creatures out on the field as possible. So turn 2. He hasn't really done anything new, so we'll throw out 2 more G2 Lava Runners because they will get quite a bit of damage off next turn. Gutterbones is a terrible card against this deck because it comes in tapped, which normally is not a problem because you don't want to be blocking with Gutterbones. But when you are being raced, especially as this guy seems to be Rakdos aggro, he should not be attacking. He should be saving both of those, using them to block my G2 Lava Runners, and trying to stabilize. This turn, I will throw down a Fanatical Firebrand, and then I will just use my Shock to kill off his Fireblade Artist, because Fanatical Firebrand can kill Gutterbones. Throw Wizard's Lightning to his face, and that triggers my G2 Lava Runners, which are now all 2/2s instead of 1/2s. Gets an extra 3 damage. And there you have it. By turn 3, we've hit for 13. We could have hit for a bit more if we'd shocked the face. We could have hit for 15 total so far. Now we just need to refill the hand or slowly grind him out. He's almost dead. He's got 3 mana open, but he really needs to get a decent defense mounted. Fireblade Artist, if he'd kept that up and blocked the G2 Lava Runners, he might have been able to do something, same with Gutterbones, but instead he attacked, thinking maybe he could race us, and that was a mistake. So eventually he plays a Fireblade Artist, and it goes back to our turn, and we draw Light Up the Stage. Now, here's why this card is so amazing. We'll trigger the Firebrand to kill Gutterbones, just because Gutterbones, we don't want him blocking and killing a Lava Runner, though they are more important than the Firebrand is. Hit with all 3, the Fireblade Artist will trade for 1, the other 2 will hit his face, triggering the Spectacle for light up the stage. Use it. All we need to draw is any of our bolt spells. Skewer the Critics, that's a bolt spell. Use it for Spectacle cost, and the game is over. Took about 2 minutes in total, very quick, and this is exactly what this deck wants to do. It just wants to get cards out on the field as fast as possible, and do as much damage as you can before the opponent stabilizes, and by the time they do, just throw a few burn spells at their face, and they'll die. Anyways guys, as always, thanks for watching. Comment below what you think of the deck. It's a very quick, very easy deck to make, very fast, very cheap, only a few rares, and those rares are Risk Factor. The deck is lightning fast, as you saw, 2 minutes for that game. You don't really need to even have a 50% win rate unless you want to climb the ladder, which this deck can climb the ladder fairly well. But you just want to use this to get as many wins as possible in a day, get your individual cards, get your quest rewards and your packs, and finish your quests. And yeah, great deck, very fast. Comment below what you think about it. And as always guys, have a good one.